Call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Before we move on to anything else, could everyone please check the ballots that are in front of you and make sure your name is printed on it? That's how we record who voted what way. So all four ballots should have your name in on the upper right-hand side below the name of the office. If anyone does not have their correct ballots, please let us know so we can pass those out. Okay. Well, we don't have a secretary at this point, so I guess I'll call the attendance. Joe? John? I'm here. Victoria? Stephanie?
Here.
Alex?
Here.
Angela? Justin? Jennifer?
Here.
Jane? Peter? Mary?
Yep.
That's all 12. All right, we'll now move on to the item B, board reorganization. The first thing is the election of officers, and I will turn this matter over to the superintendent to moderate the election of the chair.
All right, good evening. And before we begin elections, I'll start by reading the bylaws of the board as is customary. For the election of officers, the Board of Education shall consist of a chair, a vice chair, secretary, and a treasurer. Such officers shall be elected from the board membership at the annual organizational meeting, the first regular board meeting, Board of Education meeting held each July. They shall remain in office until new officers are elected at the next annual meeting, unless such officers cease to be members of the Board of Education. If there's a vacancy amongst the officers during the course of the year, the board membership shall act promptly to elect a new officer to fill the vacancy. The superintendent of schools or designated agent shall call the annual organizational meeting to order and serve as moderator for the election of the new Board of Education chair at the annual organization meeting held each July. If the superintendent of schools or his or her designee is not here, not present, the board will elect a temporary chair by majority vote. The temporary chair will preside over the meeting until the board elects a permanent chair. The new chair will take office immediately upon election. The board will then elect a vice chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. The new officers will take office immediately upon completion of all elections. Board members shall vote by paper ballot, and a majority of the total membership of the board shall be required to constitute election. If there are more than two nominees on the first ballot, no nominee receives a majority vote of the full membership. The nominee receiving the lowest number of votes shall be removed from the list of candidates before balloting again. Upon motion duly made and seconded, an officer of the school board may be removed from office by a 2/3 vote of the board membership, voting by ballot. At this time, I will open the nominations for the officer of chair of the Board of Education. Okay, so we have a nomination from Greg Cava, recommended by Alex, seconded by Angela. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on and allow Mr. Cava to make a statement if he so chooses to do so, and then we'll hold the election.
Very much appreciate the nomination. With the elected, I will serve. That's all I can. We do. The purple.
So despite it seems like a formality, we will ask you to complete the purple paper ballot indicating your vote. And then you can pass them over to me, and then we will.
Well,
Come
actually,
around.
it'd be
Or-
better if you flash.
Why don't you come right?
That
Yeah,
would be fast.
sorry, thank you. Okay, so in case you didn't hear that, it was a unanimous vote. Mr. Cava, will be elected as chairman. And I will now turn the meeting back to Greg, to proceed with the rest of the elections.
All right, the next office is the office of vice chairperson. Do we have a nomination? John?
To nominate a veteran of this board for the past 20+ years, Peter Tagley.
Oh, that's right. We need a second for Peter. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Okay, now. Moved and seconded. Any further nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations? Is there a second? All those in favor? All right, the nominations are closed. You have two choices. Tagley and Ms. Purdy. And out things immediately after the
So you're smart to wear shorts.
Oh, yeah, it's always hot. Besides, I refuse to wear pants in the sun. Someone else. I've got to wear a suit in my boat status. I'm not a judge. It's 2 o'clock, it might be hotter now. What do we do? Those are our bylaws saying. No one gets a majority, but we have only 2 people, so we can't have the lowest one to drop out. So we're gonna have to vote again.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we are I'm sorry. So We're gonna have to do it again, so.
Yeah.
Well, we had a tie vote. I'm sorry? Where does it say that? Is he right?
John, what, are you looking at, bylaw 9121?
Why in God's name does it keep doing this? I can't get the bloody policies on. I keep getting this stupid thing on the meeting. Right, board policies. Well, here we go. This wouldn't come up. Don't ask me why. And this is the 9,000 series. From there, stay. 121. We'll have it. Where's it?
Yeah.
There it is. It's in order. Already total membership is required if there are more than 2 nominees.
There's no index.
There. What the officers do. John, I don't see it in here.
I know, and there's no index. We're looking at it either.
Well, I would think it would be in the one on election of officers, not.
Yeah, it was the last item on the election of officers. What is it? 90?
9121. Workers shall vote by paper ballot and majority. If there are not more than 2 nominees, okay.
There's no mention of a tie?
On motion, no, it doesn't have anything. It has no instructions. There's a tie. So I suppose what we ought to do is have another vote. See if it, yeah, well, actually, yeah, because neither of us had a majority of the board. You need 7 votes. Right, you need 7 votes. And so we ended up having what, a total of 2 or 3 votes on that, if I recall. Well, do we have ballots for another vote? Yeah, let's pass out the ballots for another vote. We'll let do either of you wish to address the board?
Well, I mean, I'll address the board.
Okay,
Well, I know most of you because I've been sitting with you for a very long time. I've been on the board for this is my 22nd year. I've been involved in all the issues that we face, from building a new school to renovation, program, hiring a new superintendent. I've sat through tough times. when the board was in conflict with one another on a variety of issues. Both of us are very fit. I mean, we come from the same town, we know each other. I think we're both credible candidates. Um, I'm different than Jen. How long has Jen been the vice chair? She's been on the board not as long as I, but all of us are good people. It's just a matter of who you feel would, for the moment, to serve the school board, based on their position on a variety of issues. I think we're both good candidates. I enjoy being on the board. It's been a great pleasure to serve. This is my 22nd year. Many of you I've served with for a long time, and it's just great to be on the board of ed. And if you have a position, that's wonderful. I don't think it gives you any more power than anybody else, but we do have a position on a variety of issues. All of you know, as you sit here and listen to everybody on a variety of issues, that people have positions on various issues. But I think either one of us will make a great.
I'm a big fan, obviously, of Mr. Tagley's. And so even when there are times we don't agree, we tend to have a great relationship in terms of being able to talk things out. And so I've always appreciated that. And obviously you have been on the board longer than I have, which I have a deep respect for. But I also think that we both bring something different to the board. And I think we all make efforts to do what's in the best interest of the district. So I'm not really helping very much because we're being really nice to each other.
Okay. Could you do me a favor? Could you make sure that you mark each of the ballots for vice chair with a 1 on the back of the ones you already received and you counted? Just so we are able to distinguish between them because they're the same color and you might not know which ones go with which ones. So I think I would put a 1 in a circle around it in the back of the ballot so we know. Well, yeah, we'll have her vote. No, don't write anything on it other than your vote and your signature. And we'll have them marked by our clerk. Be thankful for some of this. All right. Congratulations, Jen. You've been elected by a vote of 8-4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Condolences. Actually, I should say congratulations to you. Condolences to you. Okay, we have a vice chair. Next office is secretary. Are there any nominations for the position of secretary? Yes. Okay, we have a nomination. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations for secretary? Is there a motion to close the nominations? Second? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Abstaining, the nominations are closed. So please cast your vote. Less pension on this one. Okay. Right. By a vote of 11-0 to 1, congratulations. All right, we'll move on to treasurer. Do I have a nomination for treasurer? John?
Yes, you all know that for the past 4 years I've been treasurer, but I've always felt that it's important for the chairman of the finance committee to be the treasurer. And right now Alex is doing a tremendous job. It's a big, big job. Chairman of the finance, chairman of the operations, and I'm going to nominate him now as treasurer.
Moved and seconded. Are there other nominations for treasurer? Other nominations for treasurer? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to close the nominations? Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining? It's unanimous. The nominations are closed. Please vote your ballot. Another tense moment.
Yeah.
Okay, by a vote of 12 to nothing, Alex, congratulations. We now have our officers. Okay, the next task we have, are to, I'm gonna pass out the committee sign-up sheet. I'm gonna pass one in each direction. And so please fill out, we're gonna do the minutes in a minute, but oh, you know what? This is on here. I missed it. All right, well, let's do this. Before we get to this, the minutes of the Board of Ed meeting of June 5, 23. Does anyone want to take those off the consent agenda to modify them? Hearing none, those are adopted. Now on to the committee signups. We have the following committees, and what we do, we ask people to indicate which committee they want to belong to. You can belong to as many committees as you would like. And if you want to be a chairperson, you can put that on there, and then I will appoint the committees and the chair. The first committee is the Curriculum and Education Programming Committee, which does exactly what the title suggests. It works on curriculum and educational programming. It's going to be busy this year again, so that's an excellent committee. Ed Advance, Joe has been our Ed Advance person. Usually there's just one person on that, and he's I don't know. Yeah, he's the treasurer, so it would be very hard not to send Joe back to Ed Advance.
Are we absent that
Yeah,
night?
I was just saying, we missed the meeting.
Well, we have never had such great reports as Joe has brought back to us, and we really feel like we have a participation in that now. I think that's been excellent. Finance and Operations. Also a committee that is concerned with the budget, the finance, and the facilities and operations of the system. This is a very weighty committee. Actually, they all are. The next one is negotiations, and by negotiations, we mean labor negotiations. This is the committee that negotiates with our unions. We have 5 unions, and they negotiate the union contracts. There's not going to be a lot for the committee to do this year because all of the contracts run through the year after this. So I think they run through 25. So all of our contracts are negotiated. So this will not be a busy committee, but I'm always looking for people to join it. The Policy Committee is a committee that we recently recreated. We used to have it, then we didn't for a number of years. And there's some sense that maybe we need to go through these policies and take a look at whether there are any Region 12 specific things that need to be done to it. I would dearly love for someone to volunteer to be on the Policy Committee and someone to volunteer to be chair of that committee. Currently, I'm the chair, and I would really like to I try not to chair committees if possible. So it's a committee that will have some work to do, but it'll be manageable. I'm ex officio to every committee automatically, so. Strategic Long Range Planning Committee does exactly what you think. It creates our strategic long range plans. We just did a long range plan. In addition, they also created our Region 12 logo, which was, under Julie, they created this Region 12 logo, which was a great service. And where we saw it best used was in that brochure that you guys put out, Mark, that talked about innovation. Because not only did we use the logo and feature it spectacularly, but we used the colors and tied it all together, and it gave us something of a brand, which was exactly what we were trying to do with that. Looked very professional. So that's the other thing the strategic long range planning does. So those are the choices. Feel free to volunteer, and if you forget to volunteer for something and want to do something, send me an email. I'll appoint this committee probably within the week, and we can always add people and subtract people as they wish. So I'm going to send this around. And we'll give everyone a few minutes to work on that while we go through the rest of the meeting. Mark, I'm going to turn this over to you for your report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under my report, a lot of personnel updates. So we have a host of new appointments. We've had a very busy recruitment season for faculty and staff, and I think we've had the luxury of being able to find and bring on board some outstanding candidates, which really is not the trend around the state nor around the country. So I think this speaks volumes of the fact that Region 12 is the place that people are flocking to, even in these tough to staff days in public education. So we've recently hired the following folks. Elizabeth Ackerman as a literacy tutor at Washington Primary School. Gabriella Nello, literacy tutor at Burnham School. Ed Belinsky, agri-science teacher at the Chippewa Valley School. Kevin Clementi, math teacher at Chippewa Valley School. Sue Haverly, agri-science secretary at Chippewa Valley School. Stacy Holm, teacher at Burnham School. Elizabeth Hosking, teacher at Washington Primary School. Christine Kirsten, special education teacher at Chippewa Valley School. Daniela Morello, teacher at Burnham School. Robert Moen, technology education teacher at Chippewa Valley School. Patrick Odell, ice hockey assistant coach at Chippewa Valley School. Michael Pringle, educational assistant at Washington Primary School. Kimberly Schramm, literacy tutor at Burnham School, and Dylan Stacy, math intervention teacher at Washington Primary School. We also have the following resignations and retirements: Rachel Murray, agri-science teacher at Chippewa Valley School. Lisa Roush, college and career center assistant at Chippewa Valley School, and Rachel Stone, paraprofessional at Chippewa Valley School. And one transfer, Dara Ray, will be transferring from Washington Primary over to Burnham School for the coming school year. The only other thing I'd like to add in my report is that it's often, I think, easy to think that summer's a time that's slow for schools because the students are home and teachers aren't here. But it's actually a really busy time for certain parts of the district for sure. Our administration team does try to sneak in a vacation, but then outside of that, they're busy working, preparing for the next year, doing scheduling, getting their buildings ready, securing all of the resources so that we have a successful opening of school. Also recruiting, hiring, interviewing of teachers, as we just read off that list, and that's no small feat. But I think one of the things that folks might also overlook is our unsung heroes in our custodial department will literally go room by room, removing everything, shampooing carpets, stripping and waxing floors, cleaning the walls. Every single room gets cleaned top to bottom. So that's a huge task for us over the summer, in addition to many of the other projects we have going on. So again, I just want to highlight and recognize all the work that those folks put in, and just want to make sure that folks don't think that the entire district just takes it easy during the summertime, but some folks really do most of their heavy lifting during the summer months. So thanks to everybody who's working hard to get the district in shape. It looks great. We have lots of building projects going on. We repaved and restriped the parking lot over at Washington and at the central office complex. We're also doing some painting we did exterior painting at Burnham School. We also did exterior and interior painting over at Washington Primary. And we're discussing right now adding some lettering on the side of the building at Washington Primary too, so that it's a little easier for folks who are coming into that complex to see where the school is. And then also a major project here at the high school. We've replaced all the windows around the school. That project is wrapping up. And I think you'll notice that it's a nice breath of fresh air and a nice facelift for the building. So lots going on. In the coming days, we'll also be doing a couple other big projects. I think the largest one in the near term is the dredging of the fire pond. So we need to drain the fire pond, and then we need to dredge the fire pond to make it more easily accessible for the fire department should they ever need to garner water from that source. However, in planning for that project, we did notice that there is a nesting group of red-winged blackbirds, and so we have to wait until nesting season is over before we go ahead with the dredging piece. So draining is starting to happen, but dredging will be slightly delayed.
That's a good task. Really good done, Todd.
I just wanted to ask Mark a question. It seems like there's been a high percentage of resignation concerning our ag science teachers. With a, relatively 4 or 5 instructors, I think we've lost. I think it's 3 or 4 over the past few years. I mean, is there any specific reason or?
I mean, I'm aware of 2 resignations this year. I don't know about years past. And I can't publicly talk about folks,
Reason.
reasons for making those choices. That's an HR decision.
I know, Ed Belinsky is a good choice because he was the director at Region 14, correct?
Yes, he was the director at Region 14. He's got 13 years of experience. He actually joined us on our accreditation visit and was so taken by what he saw that he said, "Hey, that's a place I really would like to be." And so when the opportunity came, he reached out and said, "It's a little out of the box. What do you guys think?" And I think it was, perfect opportunity for both Ed and for us in the district. So we're over the moon and bringing him on board.
Excellent. Yeah.
Are all the positions for the teachers and staff, is it full now?
As of today, it is, although we did hear of a potential teacher who may be taking a job in another district, so that may open up one additional elementary position in the coming weeks.
No, we've already passed. Oh, yeah. Okay. Did we, by the way, Brian, do we hire a Spanish teacher for the elementary program?
So for the elementary program, yes, Leslie Holtz Grube is going to come back and reprise her role, but in the elementary level, helping build and teach that program for the coming year.
So we think that's a really amazing opportunity to really get that program off the ground properly. That, if you remember, was the original concern. How do we have a really good, rich Spanish program?
Pretty much.
And I'm not sure we can do better than that. I think we're getting a good program off the ground. I just want to make a couple of comments. I really think we're headed into a very important year. Some things that I'd like to see on our agendas. I would really like to have us understand and learn how elementary education is taught in our schools, in our district, and in general. Because I think that's an area that needs some that we need to focus on and we need to understand. So I'd like to see those I'd like to see some presentations related to that, so we can really understand how that functions and how they interface with our facilities and with our kids. I think that would be a really good start. I think we'll focus on that. Another thing that I think really needs focus here at the middle high school is on our humanities program. We've spent a lot of time on science, and we kind of haven't spent much recently. We've been sort of coasting on the theory that humanities has always been so good here that maybe it didn't need attention, but I want to find out how this board can support that program and how we can make sure that we have a top flight program. I mean, we do have some new potential subject areas. We have a teacher who has a background, his degree is in philosophy. And I'd like to see some philosophy courses being taught. I think it's magical stuff for those of you like me that majored in philosophy. But I don't think a lot of people get exposed to it. They think it's kind of a stuffy old thing, and it really isn't. It's really important stuff. And, so I think I'd like to see that. I'd like to see us be able to support that program so that it really gets to go somewhere. And I think that's important. We're shortly after that, when we get to our next subject, I'm hoping that we'll spend some time on the arts as well, because I'd like to see us get a focus on that both at the elementary and the middle high school level. At some point, and probably not this year, I would really like to understand why our athletic teams are so really good. How does a tiny school like this have star after star, program after program? What we want to make sure we don't mess it up, and we can improve anywhere that it hasn't been at that level. It needs more support. Support these programs, and I'm hoping we do eventually get to televise some of those athletic events. I would really like to watch those and have people in the community watch, so I can tell them about it and say, you really need to see this basketball game or this football game because this is important. And I'd like to really see us go in that direction as well. So I think there's a lot of things on our plate, but most importantly, elementary education and humanities, I think are the primary, I hope are going to be primary focus for us in the year ahead. I don't know if anyone else has any ideas or thoughts on that, but that's those are areas that I thought should attention merit.
We used to have a public speaking class that all the seniors had to take, or maybe they took it in the junior year so that they would be prepared for speaking for their senior project. And I don't know, I don't think we still have that, do we?
I don't know if we do, but we probably ought to, we probably ought to hear about that. Why don't we have it? If we don't, if we do have it, great. If we don't, why don't we have it? And, what are we doing on that? Although I'll tell you, I don't know where they're getting the training, but the senior projects I've seen have been spectacular.
That was another thing that I wanted to bring up. In the past, especially when senior project first started, what we did was we had members of the community that were experts in their fields to be able to come in and work with these kids. And I felt that that was a great thing. But we used to have, what did they call it? Had a group that was, I don't remember what it was called, but like they're the people that put in two different things. And one of the things that they did was they used to match up the kids with the adults and that had expertise in their field for all the different things.
Well, maybe we should have a presentation by Mrs. Youngblood come in and explain to us, Dr. Youngblood, come in and explain to us how that program works, what they're doing, what are some of the things, why we've gone in some different directions and what have you. And also to remind us, to remind us when they're occurring so we can attend them. I've been to a bunch of them. I wasn't able to go this year, but I've been to a bunch because they were all in person. I had no time to be here. But I do want to get back to going to as many of those as we can. But they're absolutely terrific. And when you see a kid that maybe hasn't had any public speaking training, stand up there and deliver for 45 minutes in an excited way about a program that they have created that is of real interest to them. Oh, it just doesn't get done.
When it was first established in the project, there were people that said, "Oh no, special ed kids shouldn't have to do it." I'm like, "Why? This is their chance to show them what they're great at." And some of the greatest projects I saw, like special ed kids, that did some spectacular things. I go to a lot of them, but I can't get to go to the but I try to get to one a day. And I really love them.
No, senior
But
project.
I thought that maybe we could have people from the community again that may help some of the things. So, and some of the people that would be happy to do that.
All right, well, I think that's good. I think if Dr. Youngblood will come in and talk to us, we can voice that then, and we'll find out and see what she thinks. She's doing a wonderful job running that program. So we are fortunate to have her. I've had the pleasure of being in the classroom for the prep and the health court and it's just terrific. What happens there? So, all right, well, yeah, I mean, I think this is hopefully going to be a really exciting year and, we'll be off to a good start. So we'll move on in the agenda to new business and updates. And the first item is a solar update. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna ask you because you're the chair of the committee, but
I was afraid.
but if you want someone else to do it,
No, well, I think Nicole may want to chime in. But basically what we have to do is we have to get approved by the utility company. And we put out requests for the 3 elementary schools and here. We were denied the one here. We can reapply for it in the fall. In August, is it? In August. But we were approved for the other 3 elementary schools. Now, 2 of them seem to be pretty cut and dried. Booth is somewhat problematic, and we're trying to come up with an innovative way to get the power from the solar panel fields to the building. It constitutes having to put in more telephone poles, put wires across the street. And so we're working on that, but Nicole has done the numbers on the other 2. And it makes sense, even though we're not doing all 4 at the same time. It makes sense at least to do the 2 at Washington Primary and Burnham. There is your packet, there came this thing from Greenleaf. If you go to sort of the back of it, there are 2 spreadsheets showing numbers and how much income we would get over the next 25 years. It is the recommendation of the F and O committee that we go ahead and proceed with this. Nicole, is there anything you'd like to add?
In the packet that Alex is talking about from Greenleaf, there are two different spreadsheets that show two different sets of numbers. The first is if we purchase the system and pay for it ourselves. And the second is if we were to lease it through a leasing company. So that's the reason for the two different returns.
And
So if we purchase it rather than finance it, we'll make more money.
Correct.
We'll get 976,000 as opposed to 678,000.
Correct.
And this is for the two schools,
For both schools combined.
Washington and Burnham.
but we have not given up on Booth. We're still looking to see if we can make that work.
Yeah, my understanding is the problem is getting it from the solar panels to the pole.
Mhm.
And there's not a convenient pole with a transformer. There's got to be a transformer there. There's not a convenient transformer to where our panels are, and we may have to find an alternate route to get in there. Because what we don't want is a tangled mess of stuff all over the place. So it's going to be tricky, but hopefully we'll be able to do it, and hopefully we can get Chicago online next year. A little disappointed when we get that grant.
That's what happened, what?
To be honest, and this is purely my own opinion, utility companies don't want us to do this. And so they have worked with the state legislature. They basically changed the rules on us right in the middle of us doing this. It looked like initially Chippewa was a slam dunk, but the primaries were going to be the problem. Then they changed the rules, the numbers changed. It became a situation where it made more sense for us to buy the system and own it ourselves. And that's where we are today. So hopefully we will get picked next time and we will be able to do it up here, because up here it makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah, right. To put it in a nutshell, they make more money on us here than they do at the other schools. In fact, Booth, if worse came to worse, we don't do Booth, that's our smallest bill by far. So we're not really losing a whole lot, right? But electric companies are also doing their homework, and they know that if we get, this school approved, that that cuts into their revenues. So that's the long and short of it.
Shall we get our representative Maria Horn? Should we get her to help us?
I mean, we can always try. I don't know that it'll do much. I mean, it'll put on people's radar. I think that how grossly unfair it has been that they changed the rules midstream. And certainly we're not the only, group that's caught in this predicament, but I mean, that was really the legislature who let this happen. They let them change the rates.
Ours was Maria Horn. Who's your representative?
The rep is, the other rep is. Harrison.
Maybe we can get both of them to work.
Well,
Or us,
I
maybe the next
I think maybe we can. I don't know what they can do. I only have 3 words as the solution to this. Tennessee Valley Authority. And that's what I would suggest. I would suggest that we have the Connecticut Valley Authority. And we start to have public ownership. That's what happened during the Great Depression, because the government didn't know how much it cost for electricity. And when they started the Tennessee Valley Authority, the electric rates for the entire country dropped precipitously. They found out that we were being taken advantage of, because electricity was new and no one knew what it cost to make until the Tennessee Valley Authority, and we found out. So, I think it would be embarrassing as all get out for a utility company to admit that they are holding back the greening of this state and this country. They are holding back the ability of municipalities to save money for their taxpayers because they're worried about their income. I got a simple solution for that: public power. So anyway, that was my rant.
Especially since we're going to be generating electricity probably more than we need. So
They really don't.
the
like that.
push is to go totally electric cars. There's even the power equipment vendors, that they're all going to batteries. Something needs to charge all this. So, yeah,
May I suggest that Mark, if you get in touch with our two representatives, the state senators, I don't have as much confidence.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole and I would be happy to meet with them and educate them on, what happened here and, hopefully they can go to bat for us. And maybe, and to your point, we were sort of outfoxed, not us, Region 12, but, all of us collectively by the lobbyists working for Eversource.
Yeah, I think Maria will help you a lot. She's big on environmental issues.
Nicole?
So I just want to provide some of the factual background. So if you are going to talk to representatives, you understand the process. So when we applied for applied for a tariff award. And in order to do that, we actually submit a bid to Eversource and say, we want to put this solar field in, and this is what we're going to sell our power to you for. And when Eversource goes to those tariff awards, it works just like a bidding process where they give the awards to the people who bid at the lowest cost to Eversource. So the reason we didn't get the award is we weren't in that chunk of the lowest cost. So basically our bid was too high. So I just want to make sure, and you get to see those results. We don't have them yet because this information is new and we know that we didn't get the award, but we don't know what the rate was that other people bid in at that beat us. But there is a competitive portion, a competitive piece to this. So I don't want people to think they want our money for the energy and that's why they didn't pick us, because we didn't bid in competitively enough is why we were selected.
So the bids are sealed. They're not,
Currently, the results haven't been released, but they will be released.
they will be released, but
So
they're
we
not
will be
released.
able to
Yes,
see
that makes the process very difficult. You just don't know what to bid without knowing what the market is.
So when we go back in August, we will likely change what we offer.
Well, it could very well be that maybe I don't know whether our representatives can be helpful with the issue. Bid this one. We'll,
It just doesn't make any sense to me that we have to apply to the energy company that's going to make the money if they don't say it.
well, no, but see, the energy company is buying their power. That's the issue. And so you can't really say, it would be unfair of me to say that the energy company has nothing to say about how much they pay for the market. But I just don't think the process is very transparent. I think it needs to be more transparent in order to know what appropriate bids are, because the amount of, every year we go by with another year of paying electric bills, there's another year that, the taxpayers have to be disadvantaged. I mean, there's got to be a better way to do it, but in any event. Well, I will leave that to you and the superintendent to figure out how best to track us forward on that. Maybe get Chicago on the line, and also how to figure out the issue with Burnham Booth. Okay, so what do you need from us? Do we need to approve going forward with the purchase for Washington and Burnham schools?
So, so there's 3 action items on tonight and they're all sort of interrelated. And what I'm proposing with regard to Washington and Burnham is that we purchase the systems outright using our own funding. So we would use $400,000 plus or minus. Our year-end figures aren't completely closed yet because we're still getting invoices in for June. They come in July, so we're still working through payroll and paying off, finalizing invoice payments for June before we can actually close our fiscal year in full. So I don't know yet what our budget surplus is, but I estimate that we'll have about $400,000 to spend toward these solar fields. And I'm recommending that we pay for it outright rather than doing a lease agreement, which is what was originally proposed when we were going to do all 4 of them at once. And we will still need to do a lease agreement when the time comes to do Chicago. But if we pay for these outright, it will be less debt, obviously, in the form of lease payments on the district. It also uses some of our year-end surplus funds. And because we've now switched, there's a lot of moving parts, and we've switched to using USA manufactured solar panels, which will give us a 40% credit or actual incentive payment from the federal government. So we will need extra funding other than just year-end surplus funds. And I'm going to ask tonight that you approve that we use funds from the elementary CNR fund and the reach restricted fund to bridge the gap for the purchase. And what will happen is in 2 to 3 years after the solar project is done, so 2 to 3 years from hopefully this fall, if we move forward, we'll get an incentive tax payment from the federal government equivalent to those funds that we're using to reimburse the funds back. So the incentive payment is now 40% because we've agreed to use panels that are manufactured in the United States. So of the purchase price, we'll receive 40% back, and we're essentially borrowing money from ourselves. We're using money that's in our restricted funds to bridge the gap between our budget surplus and the cost, but then that money will come back again in the form of tax incentive, and we can replenish those funds. So there is an action item for that financing agenda tonight.
All right, so in your action items, you've got everything you need for this. Okay, so we'll wait till we get there. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the refinance of the $4 million bond anticipation note, a 15-year municipal loan with a 1-year call option. What this is really about is we have we're waiting for some of the funds on the Ag Science and Science Lab project. The state withholds, was it 11 or 15%? I think
11.
the state withholds 11% of the grant until they've audited the project. And the string wasn't pulled to start that process until a few months ago, and it could be years. So we have been borrowing every year $4 million, which up to it ramped up to eventually $4 million, which is the amount that's been held back. We've been borrowing it with bond anticipation notes. And when we originally took those notes out, they were fairly low interest rate, but they've gotten higher now. So Nicole's going to tell us what she wants us to do.
So this will be the 7th time we've rolled that financing, and the interest rates on short-term obligations right now are higher than they've been since we started. And they're actually higher than long-term interest rates. But because this is money that is not intended for long-term, we don't need to hold this financing for 20 years. We have to stay in the short-term market. So every year when we go out, there's significant costs with issuing these bond anticipation notes between 30 and 45,000, depending on the year, the amount, what the market's doing. And we keep paying that annually on top of the interest that we're paying. And right now, if you look at what's been going on with short-term note issues around us, they're coming in between 3 and 4%. So that's what we can expect to get if we were to issue notes. So in talking with our financial advisor and our counsel, we approached Webster Bank, who's our primary bank, and asked them if they would give us a loan so that we don't have to keep rolling this every year. We close it now, and then when we get the money from the state, we pay it off and we're done. Usually in municipal lending, they hold you to a 15-year term, but they agreed to give us a 1-year call option, which means we can pay the note anytime after the first year, which if we did notes, that's how long we would hold them anyway. The interest rate is 4.8% currently. We haven't committed to this yet, so they'll fix the rate once I commit. But I did check it on Friday and it's still 4.8%. So we're paying a little bit more interest than we would if we issued notes, but we're also fixing it at 4.8 until we actually get the state holdback, and we're stopping the paying of every year of the issuance fees. So in the long term, we should be better off by doing this rather than continuing every year to roll that funding. And in looking at the interest rates and looking at our finances and the funds that we have available to us, I'm also recommending that we use $500,000 from the capital reserve account to pay down the obligation to 3.5 million. So when our bond anticipation notes come due on August 15th, we'll repay 500,000 of it. Then we'll take a loan for 3.5 million, which will further lessen the amount that the debt costs us because the principal isn't so high. And when we get the money from the state, when the state releases our money, we can reimburse our capital reserve. So in both of these instances with the solar and with the capital reserve, the reason I'm making the recommendations is we do have healthy balances that we've built up over the years. And it's more about making our money work for us while we're in this sort of unstable financial market with these uncertain short-term rates.
Everybody understand that?
I'd like to add, the finance committee really dug into this, and it was unanimous among the finance committee that we go forward with the $3.5 million bond rather than the full $4 million. And, I'm trying to think, there was one other point on this, which I can't think of now, I've gone blank. But, it was unanimous among the five of us that we go this way. And I think it's a smart move, to be paying this fees every year to put these vans together. Just doesn't make any sense, particularly since we know it's gonna probably be 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 years before the state gets around to paying us. So, anyway, that's it.
John?
Before we start the action items, I know there's no policy governing it and, I think, I'd like to make a suggestion that before the board votes on any, or when the board votes on any capital expenditure, I'd like to see a roll call vote rather than a show of hands. I mean, I don't know, in the past, it seemed like the chairman called for a roll call vote or there was no rhyme or reason. So I don't know what would, and I know it's not on the agenda, but I don't know what would prompt a roll call vote versus a show of hands, but
Well, I think when you move and ask for us to do it, which you've just done, we'll have a roll call vote. It doesn't matter to me. We usually do the show of hands.
so we have to do it on every action item? Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
Yeah, if you want a roll call vote on every action item, I'm happy to do it. I don't see any reason why not.
But what about the future? It's like, should we set some kind of a
Well, we could set a policy,
standard?
or we can just, anytime we're doing a capital expenditure, all we need is someone to ask for it. That's enough to do it.
Okay,
And I'll try to remember on capital expenditures. I don't have a problem doing it. Does anyone else have a problem with our doing that? I mean, it's just a question of, how you vote. And just remember on a roll call vote like that is that if we get to the end of the vote, you can change your vote. Before the vote is finalized. You can always change, actually, before the meeting's like. Well, once the meeting is over, you can't change the vote. But I'm happy to have a roll call vote. I think, and going forward in the future, if you can just remind me if I forget, I'm happy to do it. I don't think it hurts. To do it, it just makes things clear. It just takes a little longer, but it's not much longer. Okay, are there any other questions on the $4 million bond anticipation note? Transferred to a loan, okay? I guess we'll move on to the action items. The first one is to consider and if appropriate, authorize the Director of Finance to transfer up to $1 million among budgetary line items to accomplish year-end procurement as represented by the Finance and Operations Committee. This is not spending any new money. This is simply taking the line items in the budget and moving them around. Just for your information, a municipality, once it allocates something in a budget, can't move it around like this. They, however, can create a rainy day fund with an unlimited amount. So they can always keep extra money and keep it rolling from year to year in order to fund the new things that come up. Boards of Ed, on the other hand, can't have a rainy day fund. But we can move things around in the budget to accomplish the same purpose. It's just a difference in how municipal versus Board of Ed finance goes. And so all we're doing here is moving money around, unspent money from one area to cover procurement of something at the end of the year. And this allows us to buy things without bonding them or without going into debt to acquire them from extra money we have sitting around at the end of the year. So, am I right on that, Nicole? Did I accurately describe that?
You did.
Okay, so is there a motion? John?
Could I clarify that though? So these are line items that are in the 23-24 budget?
No, 22.
Oh, they were from last year's budget? Okay. And we're gonna be using the surplus? So this is not gonna,
List that we talked,
attach the surplus,
it's not gonna what?
the 1,000,003 that remains?
So it's $1 million of budgetary surplus funds for 22-23 that we want to make purchases that I I put a list in the packet that shows what we want to do with the fund.
Yeah, I have that list.
Which is the solar. Um, So I'm not clear what your question is.
If they're in the 22-23 budget, why aren't they already spoken for?
I'm sorry, John, what was that last part? Why?
Why do we have to determine the $1 million that's already spoken for?
So this is the surplus funds from all the individual budgetary lines. From when we look at our financial reports every month and we see that whether things are completely spent or not spent. So this is a redistribution of those lines that weren't completely spent for other purposes.
Okay. So,
And it's from all different places in the budget. There's some accounts that had $8,000 balances. There's some accounts that had negative balances. There's some accounts that had $60,000 balances. So what we do is we look at all of those funds and pool them. And then we look at things teachers have asked us for, things that we've determined to be needs of the district that weren't budgeted, things that would be nice to add for next year that we may not have planned for back in December when we were preparing the budget. So what we're asking for is to use those surplus funds in across different budget lines to accomplish some of those things. And I did put the list in the packet, so if anybody had individual questions on any of the individual items, we could work through that.
Nicole, aren't some of these items also items that are in next year's budget or buying out of this year's money to free up money for next year?
yeah,
So that we have
that's
a
what
little-
I'm thinking. So,
Yeah, there's,
so at the end.
Yeah.
So at the end of 23-24, there's gonna be that much more money remaining.
We hope,
well,
right? Like, but this gives us a cushion in case an emergency happens. I mean, if, something unexpected, happens, then we have that, ability.
and we've already learned of 3 unexpected things within the last few weeks. So I think that's gonna be a reality. So it's more important that we do this.
I mean, this doesn't really hurt us to move this money around. It just allows us to pre-buy and not have to have that flexibility for next year, really. For us. So this isn't new money. We're not actually spending any more money than we've already taken in. We've already budgeted and taken in.
Just for clarification, if this money isn't spent, then it goes back to the towns, right? So, we're also trying to balance that and make sure that we are giving some money back to the towns, but at the same time, trying to make good prudent fiscal decisions as we look at next year's budget.
It's my understanding though, that if we use this $1 million, we won't be able to put that much into the 2% fund. Is that correct?
No, the 2%.
Still will be able to put 2%?
We've already
Already
funded the
funded.
2%. We actually
From-
had the 2%.
From last year's. I'm talking about after the audit. We can't do it until after the 22-23 audit though.
No, you have to move into the 2% fund by the end of the fiscal year. So it has to be done by June 30th. That's why we did, I think we voted on it last meeting. Yeah, we voted at last meeting because we needed to do it before the end of the fiscal year. Otherwise you can't do it. You use or lose. And so we put the 2% in, and in addition to that 2%, which is roughly about $500,000, just a little under. In addition to that $500,000, there's another $1 million in the budget that is not spent, that we want to move around in order to take these opportunities for pre-buy, especially that 400,000 solar, because that's money we would normally just borrow, and that saves the interest on it. So from the town's perspective, it sounds like, well, this is money that we're spending, but on the other hand, what it is it's saving the taxpayers money in interest savings long term. So it ends up being a better deal, long term. The more we're able to fund without paying interest, the cheaper it is to run the school district.
And then things like software licenses, book purchases, a lot of those things, if you buy them today, it's cheaper than if you buy them tomorrow. So, makes sense to take advantage of that end of the year spending. That's what most districts do, and they work with vendors to do that so that you don't get, socked for higher prices, next year for waiting.
Can I ask one more thing about the art room furniture at 85,450? That seems like quite high-end furniture.
It's specific education furniture designed for art rooms, but It's both the high school art room and the middle school art room, so we're outfitting 2 art rooms. And it's a replacement of all of the furniture that's currently in there, which has not been replaced in many, many decades and is really necessary. And we bought it off of state contract. So in terms of the quality of what we got and the pricing we got, if we were to go out on the open market, it's probably more like $200,000 worth of furniture. It's a lot of movable,
Storage.
like movable workspaces that also have storage beneath and the type of storage that's gonna hold play the right way. It's in terms of the temperature and lots of tall cabinets. I don't know if you've ever been in our room, but there's a lot of really tall cabinets in there. Those are all being replaced. They'll hold artwork. They also hold materials. We worked very closely with the manufacturer, well, the worker for the manufacturer and Donna Wright to come up with what she felt would be the best layout. And I know Donna's really excited about it, and it is very nice furniture. And this is actually phase 1 of a 2-phase project, I think, that will be coming back to the board for phase 2, because all of these components are movable. None of them are installed. So it allows us to keep this furniture while we still need to make improvements in those spaces in terms of some of the, there are some built-ins that need to be replaced, removed. Actually, there's some walls that I think we would benefit from moving in terms of better utilizing the space. And our teachers have asked us to move actually construct a new dark room within the art space, which would really improve the photography curriculum. So we're going to be looking at doing those things. That's something that'll be coming to the board sooner rather than later to finish improving that space. So this is step 1. And it also, this furniture, some of the furniture in there is actually dangerous, because it is so old and so unstable. So this will fix all of the immediate safety concerns, and then we can look at how else to improve this space while still working with this furniture, which really is very nice furniture.
Good. Thanks for that explanation.
Yeah, this is a commitment again to, Greg talked about earlier and wanting to commit to the arts and invest in the arts. This is part of that. And again, it's the first piece of it, but we will be coming back with a request for a larger project that addresses base cabinetry, counters, and those types of things. And a dark room, but it's sorely needed. If you've been in the space, it's not optimal by any stretch.
A lot of that furniture is sold to school. And so it's, it's the time these things get replaced, I think.
I have 2 quick questions, but first I just want to say, I think that we're really fortunate to be a district that's able to do that we can be so fiscally responsible throughout the year to be able to make some of these purchases ahead of the school year and before we start going into next year's budget. But just because we brought it up, and I forget every year, we return funds to the town. When do we make those?
So we don't return the funds until the audit is done, and the last few years hasn't been consistent for different reasons. But best case scenario, our audit is filed with the state by December 31st, accepted by the board in January, with funds returned to the towns in February.
So when do we have to kind of report what it is that we're
Then a return.
Yeah.
We don't do that until the audit's complete in January.
Oh, so that's, and then the second question was, I guess it's kind of the first month of expenditures that we're making for the new fiscal year. So how does that get reported in the budget? Does each one of them correspond with kind of like the line item that it was last year? Or is this like all new line item that we're creating?
So the action item that I'm asking you to approve tonight is that will allow me to transfer funds into the line items that they belong to these purchases.
So they'll go back individually into whatever, the line item is, so we can see it reflected at the end of next year. Okay, thank you.
Alex.
Yeah, I think we all know this, but even if you're not on a committee, you're more than welcome to attend the meetings of that committee. And I would welcome people to attend the F&O meetings. We went through this list of items at the last F&O meeting. Nicole went through it line by line. So we have had a chance to review this. And I just think it's extremely prudent to do this. And this is completely separate from the 2% fund. That we budget that, if I'm correct. We don't? Okay, so it is not completely separate from the 2% fund. But it does say that we've handled our money very well and kept the purse strings closed as much as possible. Oh, and please do feel free to attend the meetings. I have sat in on a couple of other committee meetings periodically over the years, and it's very informative and to see, how the sausage is made.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, did anyone make this motion? So can we have a motion to authorize the Director of Finance to transfer up to $1 million among budgetary line items to accomplish year-end procurement as recommended by the Finance and Operations?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor, please, let's take a roll call vote. See, I did remember, John.
Here we go. So when we do, I'm just going down the line alphabetically. We have.
Yeah.
Okay, Joseph Abdallah. John Boniuto,
Yes,
Greg Kava,
Aye.
Victoria Salem. Yeah. Stephanie Colnick, aye. Alex McNaughton. Angela Macarulo. Justin Ongley. Ben Cody. Yes. Jane Sargent. Peter Tagley. Mary Weber.
Well, that's unanimous. So that's done. Next item. To consider and if appropriate, authorize the total expenditure of $500,000 from the capital reserve fund and the debt reserve fund for pay down of the bond anticipation note to be repaid to said funds upon receipt of state construction grant funds. That's what we talked about earlier. Is there a motion to authorize that expenditure? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
they can share the second. Okay, further discussion. All those in favor, please cast a roll call vote as your name is called. And you can go either reverse alphabetical or
As long as we get everybody, right? Okay, Joseph Abdallah. John Boniuto,
yes,
Gregory Kava,
yes.
Victoria Salem. Stephanie Colnick, aye. Alex McNaughton. Angela Macarulo. Justin Ongley. Jennifer Cody. Jane Sargent. Peter Tagley.
Yeah.
Mary Weber.
Also unanimous. Excellent. Okay, so the next item is to consider and if appropriate, authorize total expenditure of up to $200,000 from the elementary non-recurring fund and the REACH restricted fund for installation of solar projects at Washington Primary School and Burnham School to be repaid to said funds upon receipt of the tax incentive pursuant to the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, is there a motion to authorize that $200,000 expenditure as set forth? Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? John,
the REACH restricted fund, what is the balance of that fund?
It has about 200,000,
Didn't even how much
200,000.
in the REACH?
and how much is in the non-recurring elementary?
Well, currently about 200,000, and then I'm about to make the transfer for this 23-24 fiscal year, so the balance will be 300,000.
Okay, so you got $500,000 in those two funds and we're gonna
Yep.
draw
What-
200,000.
What else would the REACH restricted fund cover?
So
In case,
the REACH restricted fund we use when we need things that are specific to the REACH program. So we haven't dipped into that fund probably in the last 18 months. We have in the past dipped into it to subsidize transportation when necessary. And also some improvements to the spaces. And I think that Don is actually looking at an improvement that's necessary to spaces currently. So we may be coming back to look to spend more of that money on some flooring in the REACH areas.
So are you anticipating 100,000 from each?
No, I anticipated to take a different breakdown, probably 75 and 125.
75 from each.
Correct.
Okay, further questions? Pete? Why is what gonna work?
That the money we're spending, we're spending because we've been told that the solar projects will actually work. Correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, they generate energy, and we do it at a cost well below what we're paying electric. So these things are, I mean, over 25 years, 20 or 25. Over 25 years, those two projects, if we buy them rather than finance them,
Right.
those two projects will spin off almost $1 million in savings for those two schools. So if it's only, if it were evenly distributed over that period of time, you've got what? Get this right. $50,000 a year. For 20, no, it seemed like enough for me. 40,000 are there, 40,000 a year for 25 years. So that's money that is directly less money than we would be spending on electricity. And who knows where electricity rates go? They may go even higher.
That's the point I was gonna make. That's based on if electricity rates don't rise. So to the extent that we think they may rise, which I think that they will, those returns grow because it's based on a constant of today's rates. So the $1 million is the least amount we can expect to make. We'll likely make much more. And, you know, it also has some environmental aspects as well. I mean, it's the responsible thing to do, and I think we should be looking at it.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that's important about it is it allows us to have more predictability. This is one of those things where the electric money we spend on electricity is part of those funds that we have no control over. If you remember, by the time you add all the things we don't control, we do control the union contracts, but we do and we don't. But the point is, when you take all the things that we don't have a lot of discretion over, that's 90 some odd % of the budget. This allows us to claw some of that back and to get some control over it because we've now reduced costs on this, which is something we've never been able to do before. And so I like that. I mean, from that perspective, Pete, it works. If we could take every item in the budget and have predictability and fix some long-term costs for things, it'd be a lot easier for towns to know what they're gonna have to come up with. And so this helps. It isn't, the end of the road, but it's the first step.
And you're right, given the climate, as demand rises, the costs are definitely gonna rise. The
Yeah.
rates.
Absolutely. And I think that what we've done is we've planted a flag in the ground for fixing costs and doing something that's in good environmental stewardship at the same time. We can feel good about this in addition to feeling good about saving the money. And I think it's just a wonderful thing that we can do this because otherwise that sunlight just burns all the time. And, if you're not using it, it's gone.
And that failure to have that energy independence hurts you, right? Like when we see that all the time in transportation, like that's the number one driver of, whatever they come back to us and say we have to change the cost of busing because we don't have that energy independence. So this allows us that degree of control that is almost unparalleled.
Yeah, I think the sooner we can get to having all of our schools with solar, the sooner we're going to be really saving some real money. And Chippewa is enormous. It'd be really great. Okay, any other comments? All right, so we've had it moved and seconded. When we have a roll call vote, please.
Joe Abdallah, John Bonito,
Aye.
Craig Hava,
Aye.
Victoria Salem, Stephanie Kolnick, aye, Alex McNaughton, Angela Macarillo, Justin Ongley, Jen Pody, Jane Sargent, Pete Tagley, Mary Weber.
Also, unanimous. Thank you all very much. We've accomplished a lot tonight for our organizational meeting, and I appreciate that. Our next meeting is August the 21st, when the school year starts. Alex. Oh, yeah, we did a lousy job of that. I'm sorry. I screwed that up. Becky, I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me, everyone. And I've remained quiet and I shall until I really learn how this goes, but you will hear from me.
No doubt.
Yes, I heard. You did? I heard.
And you have a running invitation to bring your son back anytime, because the last time he was here, he made me cry. What a great speech that was.
Thank you so much.
Greg, can I ask a quick question? And I know we voted on this last time and I guess I didn't read it. The new calendar for the upcoming meeting, there shows the retreat meeting on September 18th from 8 to noon. That's a Monday. I have a job
Yeah, I
I
know.
do as well.
and I think just a
What the point of this is we're trying to take a field trip to a new elementary school. And you need to go there when there are children in the school. And so unfortunately, that's the only time we can do it, because I want you to see, I want you to see the school. I want you to meet with this principal and hear how they deliver the educational program in the new building. What's in the new building? And how do they make it function? How is that necessary? Because I want you to, when we have the folks from elementary school come in and talk to us, I want you to understand, to see it. I want you to see it. And if you can't go, I feel badly, but I don't know when else we can do it. Because if we did it at night, there wouldn't be any kids there. And I think it's important to see. They're very generous to let us in the building with kids in it, but it's important to see how it functions and how they work and how that building functions. So that's the reason why we're doing it in the morning.
Well, that makes more sense. I thought it was just our normal retreat that we typically.
No, this is a field trip. And I think it's going to be very productive because, when we get to the issue of trying to figure out what to do with our buildings, it's important for you to know what happens in a new building as opposed to what happens in our buildings. And, that way, what we do, if we decide that we're going to renovate to new or something like that, you're not going to get any of that in space. At least you'll know what you're leaving on the table. And that's the idea, is to understand how a modern education functions and how it functions in our school and in our schools and how we do it. So I think those are the two sides of that issue. See whether the things we could do better. Because one of the things I think that is the future of this region is to be able to put on an education that is incomparable. And that's going to cause people to move here, people with young children to move here when they see that what we're offering. And so this is just another step down the road of making our schools the best places, not just to be the best, but to provide opportunities for kids and to make these towns, keep these towns vital and alive. And I think that's important because despite everything the town government does, there's a limit to what they can do. Absent buying land and giving it away to developers for affordable housing to bring younger people here. We can have the biggest, most outside impact by providing schools that everybody wants into, because when people are working remotely, they have a choice of where to live. And you want to make us the place they want to look at. And I think that's good for us long term because it will keep our population stable. It'll keep our towns vital. And so this is let's just see what we can do. And also in the process, you're going to learn how elementary education works. And that's going to be valuable to us going forward. So this is the first step, our little field trip. I'm sorry? We're going to go to the Oxridge School in Darien. It was literally just built and it's still under construction. And you'll get to see exactly what they're doing there and how they're doing it. Now remember, that's a much larger school than us. I mean, that's a school of about 500 to 600 kids. So you will see more classrooms than we would ever use or need. But what you'll see how those classrooms function with flexible space and other things, and how they were able to bring kids out of classes and get them into a group to do, say, a reading intervention issue or something like that. So you're going to see how those spaces are designed to function to make the education flow properly. And that's how we're doing education now. And then I want to hear from our people on how we're doing it here and what they need and how do we support them in providing the best education. And so this is the first step. Well, if no one has anything else, I think we're adjourned by consent at 8:36. Thank you all very much.